All right. Hi, everybody. This is Yelena Subasic with Massey Consulting. Today, the webinar that we're doing is on the new Sage Intacct release that came out Friday, May 18th. We'll just give it a few more seconds to see if anybody else joins in. So everybody hold tight just for 20 seconds. All right. Again, thanks everybody for coming, and we're going to go ahead and start. But just as a reminder, if anybody has any questions during the presentation, feel free to just put them down in the chat box to your right, and then we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. All right, and I'll pass it over to Philip. Thanks.
Okay, thank you everyone. So I appreciate everyone joining us today. We are going to take a look at the freshly minted new release of Sage Intacct. It was, as Yelena said, it was released on May the 18th, or that weekend. So as you came into work this morning, there were some things that were brand spanking new, which is always fun, right? It's always good to come in on a Monday morning, days when nothing else goes wrong, and have some new features in your accounting system. And in today's case, a new look if you were in the Action UI. So without much further ado, we're going to jump into those features. And this is really intended to be a high level discussion of these features. I'm also going to walk you through some slides here. I'm also going to jump into the solution itself and show you a couple of things in here, and then show you where to get more information. So that's one of the real beauties of Sage Intacct and their recent releases, is that they have given you a tremendous amount of information with each of those releases that really go hand in hand with the release itself. So let's see, looks like, yeah, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. I did forget to hit the display button there. So great. Okay, appreciate that reminder. So hopefully everybody can see my screen at this point. All right, so let's jump in. Let's jump in. Okay, so some of the highlights of the new features in 2018 release 2 here in May. One of the big ticket items in this release is the nonprofit financial board book powered by GuideStar. So for those of you that are in a nonprofit organization, this is really an amazing partnership between GuideStar and Sage Intacct, who GuideStar, by the way, runs Sage Intacct. So GuideStar is the preeminent organization, as you all probably know, for nonprofit organizations, and for it to run Sage Intacct as well as to provide this partnership with Sage Intacct on this digital board book is simply amazing to have in the system. Give Sage Intacct a very big advantage in that market space, and provides nonprofits with tremendous power as well. So we'll take a look at that briefly. There is an advanced audit trail module that I'm going to talk to you a little bit about here. This is geared really towards HIPAA compliance and the new GDPR compliance for Europe. This is geared towards meeting those specifications. So Sage Intacct, again, on top of a lot of the new regulations that are coming out and releasing new feature sets to meet those, as well as give users additional information. So Global Consolidations has a new look and feel. No longer is it the old clunky interface. It is now in the Action UI and a part of the Action UI. So lots of good things to say about that, as well as new features coming to the system now in the Action UI interface. There are some improvements to inventory. We're going to talk about things like landed cost and replenishment. So for those of you that have inventory, those are great things to behold in the Sage Intacct solution. There have been some enhancements to contracts, uncanceling contracts, which to me is a really cool new word that I've learned with this release, to uncancel something. I guess that goes hand in hand with the undo button. So we now have an undo button in contracts in Sage Intacct. And there are a few other things with revenue recognition, with MEA, different areas inside contracts and RevRec. One of the things that if you have been going along with Sage Intacct's recommendations as far as the Action UI and working in the Action UI, one of the things that you noticed first thing this morning was the menu has changed. We've gotten a few emails and texts from people, so it's kind of funny to know who has been working in the new Action UI and who may not have been at this point, but there are some menu changes, and we'll take a look at that. There's some new administrative and web services features, and then there is so much more in the system. So there's project enhancements, there's AP enhancements, sales tax enhancements, all types of enhancements throughout the system with Sage Intacct in this release. It's a pretty big release. Okay, so let's look at the nonprofit financial board book now. This again is geared towards nonprofits, and so for some of you that are out there, you're thinking, well, this doesn't really apply to me, but keep in mind that one of the things that Sage Intacct is doing is that they are going industry by industry by industry, and they are developing these board books. So if you're in an industry, healthcare, for example, where maybe there isn't a board book specifically for you, you'll be on the lookout, because this kind of thing is coming for a number of different industries from Sage Intacct. This release happened to be one geared towards nonprofits. So the great things about these board books that Intacct is putting together is that they are the green words here. They're real time, right? It's real time current data. They are out of the box. So there's not a ton of configuration in this to make this work. There's going to be some, but there's not a ton. And then one of the neat things with this nonprofit is that with the power and the partnership with GuideStar, they're able to actually offer peer rating information. So not only do you see how your nonprofit is doing, but you see how your nonprofit is doing compared to other nonprofits that may be similar in mission or size of your organization. And that's a great thing. A lot of companies will feel like they're on an island, and this helps to really alleviate that feeling. Now, this is a new subscription module, so there is a cost associated with it, but if you're a nonprofit and you are analyzing your information as you should be, this can be an extremely powerful tool for your organization. So second thing to point out is one of the features that I think is extremely good to have, and this is for everybody. So this is nonprofits, this is SaaS, this is professional services, healthcare, this is everybody. Advanced audit trails. So new in the May release is not only tracking who, what, and when, but individual bits of data. as well. So for example, if you can read some of these on here, this advanced audit access is recording the fact that names were changed, that addresses were changed, that personal information was changed. So this gets into HIPAA compliance and GDPR compliance because Sage Intacct is now able to track and audit record level personal data, right, for your personal health information. Okay, so Sage Intacct is now going to be able to be HIPAA compliant, right? Working very studiously towards that and now able to sign some of those required documents for organizations that really need that type of audit capabilities. And there's also going to be, just as a note, a service option here to anonymize older personal data. So if you've got older records, older customers, older contact information that's in the system, and you want that anonymized so that you are not in danger from that standpoint, Intacct has a service offering now for that to even further become HIPAA and GDPR compliant. As a note, this module is a separate subscription, but certainly well worth it if you fall into one of those compliance guidelines. And certainly a great thing to see coming from Sage Intacct. And just on a personal note with this, I think what you're going to continue to see is more and more and more audit trail information coming out of Sage Intacct. So the who, the what, the when, all of that information, and being able to access it easily at your fingertips, not only to find potentially what went wrong, but just find what changed. Be able to be alerted about these things, run reports about these changes that are made. I think you're going to see more and more and more of that as time continues to pass, because it is a very hot button topic. So global consolidations. So I see there's a couple of names here that probably are using global consolidations. So this will be good news for you. It is now out of the old interface, which I think may have been actually the old interface, and is up into the new Action UI. One important note here is that a lot of the new features, if not most or all of the new features for global consolidations, will only be added inside the Action UI. And that's a trend too that we are seeing with Sage Intacct, is that they want to have folks using that Action UI. So sort of that carrot on a stick is going to be the new features and functions, like the new AP Workbench. That's only available in the Action UI. So you're going to see more features in all the modules, including global consolidations, that are only in the Action UI. So with this now, you're going to be able to, for example, drill down to those source details. So you're going to have a lot more proof, I guess, drill down capabilities, source detail capabilities straight from the documents that you're producing. So the reports coming out of global consolidations will have much more drill down capabilities in the system. And then also, as part of the rewrite here with this, it's going to be faster producing the reports. It's going to be faster setting up the information, etc. So it's just going to be easier to use and brought up to date in the new interface. Okay. All right, so let's talk inventory. And here again, I see a few folks with the inventory module that are dialed in, so that's fantastic. So landed cost. With this release, you're going to be able to automate that costing layer adjustment for related costs from the vendor invoice. So you're going to be able to take the cost. Let's say you order a quantity of inventory from China. That inventory is brought over to the States, to your location. and you've got the cost of the inventory, and you've got a cost of the freight as well. You're now going to be able to put those together. You're going to be able to automate that process. You're going to be able to have a full look at the total cost of your inventory. Replenishment, you're now going to be able to set levels at which you will replenish your inventory and begin to use automated functionality for reordering and fulfillment of that inventory replenishment. System's going to generate the purchase orders for you, Sage Intacct is, and you're going to be able to really automate that whole process from beginning to end for replenishing the inventory. So again, here's another way in which Sage Intacct is really stepping up the functionality inside the inventory module of Sage Intacct and giving you a really a robust inventory system. One of the neat things that they have added here is a warehouse user type. So this is specifically going to be for warehouse staff. We can talk pricing on this if anyone is interested, definitely willing to get it for you, but I can tell you that it's going to be quite a bit less expensive than a full business user license. So if you have any warehouse users that are taking up business user licenses, we can talk about making that change, certainly at least when your renewal comes up. Or if you are looking to add users or wishing you could have a warehouse user, then your wish has definitely been granted with this latest release. So they'll be able to go in and work with the inventory. They'll be able to manipulate the inventory, run reports on the inventory, etc. But really be focused specifically on the inventory module, much like project manager users have a lot of functionality inside the projects module. So same type of concept in a different module. So let's talk about contract billing and revenue management. So for contract control, you've got a lot more capabilities to manage those contract schedules. You've got more choices inside of the system. For cancellation management, we now have, as I sort of alluded to earlier, a new word for me, uncancel your contract. So if you go in and just make a mistake and cancel that contract, we now have that much loved undo type functionality inside Sage Intacct. We've got the ability to have a geo posting date for your contract line items, which lets you separate your operational and financial contract dates. And I'll have an example of that for you later. And then you've got a lot more Salesforce synchronization options. So they are, again, constantly enhancing all the areas of the Sage Intacct solution with each release. So as part of the contracts piece, we're also giving you more synchronization options for Salesforce. So definitely something to keep an eye out there for with this new release. Revenue flexibility, event-driven revenue recognition, right? So we've added that capability. So if you fulfill something, event-driven revenue recognition rather than potentially just time-based revenue recognition. You've got more MEA calculation methodologies, and you've got the ability now to override the MEA calculation. So multi-element arrangements, if you're combining products and services, let's say a software sale, an implementation, and an ongoing support contract, and you're bundling it together for $50,000, then that's a multi-element arrangement. There's multiple delivery points. Intacct has enhanced the way that revenue can be recognized for those multi-element arrangement type of contracts. Okay, so again, alluded to this earlier. If you have been using the new Action UI, and I will admit to moving back and forth on that, some days use it, some days I don't. But I did log in this weekend to do a little catch-up work while I had some time, and was presented with the new Action UI. So this Action UI still is in beta. That is important to keep in mind. So first of all, there's always a send us feedback button on the Action UI screen. So if you have feedback about it at any point, please click that button and send the feedback to Sage Intacct. The new menu system that you see here is a result of user feedback. Users said they did not like the user menus or the menu system in the previous iteration of the Action UI. They wanted drop downs, they wanted something easier to navigate, and this is the result of that. So that's going to be the biggest change that you're going to see in the Action UI concept itself, is this new drop down menu. And I'm going to actually take you through a little tour of that after we finish our slides. But there's a few other improvements in here, such as attachments. The way that you add attachments into the system, which I'd heard from a lot of customers was a little more clunky in the new user interface. So I'm glad to see that they are addressing that. And then some of the dialog boxes are behaving a lot more appropriately within the new environment. Easier to manage those pop-up dialog boxes that come up. So new changes to the Action UI. We'll take a look at that. Remember, if you're not using the Action UI and you had no idea there were changes, please start to use it over the next few weeks, or certainly over the next couple of months. There will eventually come a day when the Action UI is just a plain old UI for Sage Intacct. So you want to get familiar with it rather than just having it thrust upon you. So Action UI, click on the Enable Action UI Beta, and it will take you into the tool. So I want to look at just a couple of small improvements that were made to the system, but these are ones that I think will be at least somewhat universal. So the first one that we will look at is the AP Workbench. You now have the ability to merge payments. So if you have created, as shown here, for example, a payment to a global insurance company, and then you go and create a new payment to global insurance company, the system will prompt you for whether or not you want to merge those two payments together. So this will help you manage payments in instances where perhaps you've got an offline service that's paying those bills and maybe they charge you per payment. This will help you to reduce those charges as well, and really just streamline the AP payment process. So we'll take a look at that one. And then also wanted to look at a little more detail on the GL start date at a contract line level. So for those of you that are using the contract billing module inside of Sage Intacct, at the line item level, Sage Intacct has added a GL posting date field, and I'll show you that one here in a little bit as well. So they've added a GL post date field, and here's two examples. So essentially on the left-hand side, you've got a contract that starts in the future, in this case, June 1, but they signed the contract today. So we want to go ahead and get this in the system so that we can issue this first invoice, we can get it booked into the system and into our books. So it's monthly invoicing. The GL posting date, we would put it to 5/12. We'd put the contract start date to June 1. That way we can go ahead and get June's invoice out today, get our payment in earlier, but then the next invoice isn't issued until July. We can do one in arrears as well, and this may be the more common scenario. I think, in my opinion, is probably the more common scenario. So you've got a contract that started on 3/1. The contract wasn't signed until 5/15. Some kind of negotiations, legal, etc., jumping into the mix and asking for changes. You've got monthly invoicing on this, but March and April are already closed because we're in May. So you can set the GL posting date to May 15th. Now, this will give you March and April billing, but revenue then is posted in May, but that leaves those operational dates intact. Kind of a play on words there, I guess, leaving it intact. But so you've got a contract that starts in March, signed in May. You can't book in the GL to March and April because they're already closed. So this gives you that ability to automate that without having to make any kind of adjusting journal entries or having to do anything really weird with your contract dates. Right? Okay. Some changes to administration and web services. You now have more insight into offline jobs. So you can go into the system, you can see what jobs are waiting to be processed, and you have more insight into that. And if you are on a silver level or higher premium level of service, you can reorder those jobs in the system. And for those that did not know, there are additional service levels of Sage Intacct that you can subscribe to. Typically, it's only pretty large organizations that will do this, but they will guarantee quicker service turnarounds. They will, in some cases, depending upon your level of subscription, they will put you on a separate server, so to speak, or at least in a separate instance there, so that you're more secure and have more resources dedicated to your needs. Web services users have now been moved to their own list, and for me, that's one of the coolest things that they did in this release. Web service users are in their own list. You no longer have to worry, are these business users, am I getting charged for these users? If I go look in here, it says I have 5, but I think 2 of them are web services, or one's web services, I can't remember. Now they're in a separate list. And then active centralized control of web service authorizations. So separating these users out into different areas gives you a lot more control over the web service authorizations. Not only that, but the applications that are feeding data into your, or pulling data from your Sage Intacct instance. You can get a lot more information on these types of enhancements through the Sage Intacct developer portal. It's developer.intacct.com, actually maybe developer.sageintacct.com now. I think either one will probably get you there. If you can't find it, shoot us an email, support@masseyconsulting.net, and we'll be happy to chase it down for you. All right, one more slide. So as Sage Intacct continues to produce these releases, and I know you guys can't really write that down and head to that YouTube site, this will be hyperlinked when we produce the video, or I'm sorry, the slides for you and send them out to you, so you'll be able to click here and find it. But this is Sage Intacct has created a playlist of videos that talk about all the new features. So there's things that we won't really be able to get to today, but there is a video playlist on YouTube, as well as you have the ability to get to these from within the Sage Intacct application. So here's a link. We will hyperlink this when we send the slides out so that you've got access to just click on it. So it looks like we do have a question. Let me see. The interface, I believe, would have changed for employee users as well. To be honest, I haven't checked that either. but I do believe that it would have changed. I don't think there's a difference between the two. So great question though. I do believe that it would have changed for them as well. But I'll take a look at that, and then we'll send that email confirmation out as well. Okay. So let's jump over into Sage Intacct, and I do want to show you a couple of things. So let me grab my ASCIIsoft Corporation, and I'm going to bring it over here. So I have moved over Sage Intacct. If anybody can't see it, if you just want to raise your hand inside GoToMeeting, certainly can't see it if you raise it at your desk, but stop me in GoToMeeting if you can't see it. So one of the things that you will notice right off the bat is there are no words in the blue area. There are very few words, I should say, in the blue area. That is where the menu system is gone. If you remember from last Friday, you had things like accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger. The problem with that, though, is power users. One of the issues was that power users that had access to a lot of the modules often found themselves coming over to the right-hand side of the screen and scrolling to the right to get to some of the other modules they needed. The second issue they had was in the old interface, if you hovered over accounts receivable, you've got your drop-down list of all the different choices of what you could do. Well, in the new version, old version of the Action UI, trying to keep that straight. So the old version of the Action UI, all you got when you clicked on accounts receivable, when you hovered over accounts receivable, you got nothing. When you clicked on accounts receivable, it took you to the front screen of AR with all the icons. So the biggest piece of feedback, I think, on the Action UI was regarding the menu system and the fact that the drop-downs were gone. So what Sage Intacct has done in this iteration of the user interface is they have come in and they have said, okay, general ledger, and then here are the different menus within the general ledger, including if I click here, for example, here are all the different dimensional structures that are available. So this really puts every piece of the Action UI or of the Sage Intacct environment at your fingertips. So you can get to everything from here. General ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, contracts. If I go down to order entry and I wanted to do a sales credit memo, here we are. Our processes are back. We can go through all these different areas. So it's been a complete rewrite of the menu system. Now, one thing I did not notice until probably about an hour and a half or so ago in using this today is the setup menu. Hadn't had a call or a thought to look for it yet. So keep in mind there's all and there's setup. So just like in the 2012 interface, the old interface, when you had to click on the setup, open setup button, that's what we're doing here. We're clicking on setup. Okay. So we've got all, we've got setup. Now notice under all, notice we have quite a few of these little stars. So what do you think these stars are for? They're for favorites, right? They're for favorites. We like these. We're going to give them a gold star. When we do that, they pop under favorites. Right? So here we are back at order entry, and here's our order entry favorites. Here's our general ledger favorites, our AP favorites. Okay, we're opening, we're closing the menu, we're navigating. But let me show you two things. If we are looking at order entry, for example, and I say, you know what, sales invoices are the main thing that I do in order entry, And I would really like to have that at the top of my list. I just wish that was at the top of my list. If you click on it and hold it, your wish can be granted. I can move it to the top of the list. So that is really nice inside the new favorites menu system. You can drag and drop your favorites and move them up and down the list. AP, if you want to enter bills, you can move that up to the top. Projects, you've got full control over how your favorites list is ordered. Let's also say, for example, that I've stopped doing as many renewal or, let's say, sales credit memos. We had a period, a spell, where we went through and did a lot of credit memos, but we haven't done many lately. So I'm going to unfavorite this. If I click on the yellow star, notice it turns to a trash can. I'm then going to click the trash can and it is out of my list. So it's not always going to need to be there when you add something. You can always come in and take it back out of your favorites list. Okay? So look around in the user interface. You have the ability to go to AR, for example, as always, and if I really do a lot of work with advances, I'm going to click that box and do an advance. If I go to cash management and I do a lot of work with or I want quick shortcuts to memorized reports, or maybe I don't need funds transfer to be an option there anymore on my favorites. I've got full control over what is a favorite and what is not. Okay. All right, couple more things I do want to show you. So one of the things that I think is the coolest little feature that they've added is the merge payments capability. So if I go to accounts payable and I go into pay bills, this is going to take me into my payables workbench. I'm going to say view that later. All right, and I can see that I've got an outbox payment of 1. If I click on that, it's going to show me a payment that I already have out there for a global insurance company. So I'm going to go back to pay bills and I'm going to pick my bank here that I am using to pay this bill. So I'm going to come down and I have another invoice here for the global insurance company. So I'm going to check this box and I'm going to add this to my outbox. Okay. Not a big check run, just trying to get one check out the door. Oh, look, I've already got, there's one payment request to the same vendor already in the outbox. Would you like to merge the bills? You just selected with this payment request. And you've got a choice. You can say, I do want to merge, I don't want to merge. If you say that you do, notice that you still have one outbox payment, and if we go look at it now, it's 37,000, which the previous was 25, and the one that we just added was 12. So we've got the 37,000. Okay. So neat feature there. I think it's pretty cool to have that in the system, and I think that's something that a lot of organizations are going to be able to take advantage of. And I, quite frankly, I really like those features. To see them truly enhancing payables, truly enhancing receivables, general ledger, cash management, those modules that a lot of companies, dashboards and things like that, that a lot of companies will be able to take advantage of in the system, I think for me are some of their best enhancements that they make. But I do also want to show you, for those of you that run contracts, since we have several that are on the line here with us, for those of you that run contracts, there is a new field right here that you can see, and I'm going to grab my little pointer over here, my pen, and try this. So there is a new field right here on the screen that says GL posting date. And that GL posting date is the one that we mentioned earlier. It's going to give you that ability to, again, for example, a contract starts in March, but you don't want to hit the GL until May because March and April are closed. Populate this with May. It's going to post in May, but you're still going to be able to get your invoices out the door, and you're going to have your billings consistent in the process, right? So separating those two is really it looks like a little thing, but it's really a huge leap ahead for the capabilities in the contracts module. Okay. So that's really about all I had. Now, what I will say, actually, before I let you guys go, what I will say is here's your button for the beta UI. If you haven't experienced yet, then of course, if I click off, it's going to take me back to the good old interface, right? And let me see if I can't get rid of, that should have gone away. Why does that not go away? Erase all drawings. There we go. So it's going to take you back to the older interface, right? But you've got the button right here, enable beta UI. If I click on it, that takes me back to the new interface. Okay. And then please give feedback. If they make changes to this interface and you don't like it, then please come right up here, send us feedback. It's going to take you out to this form, and you give them feedback on that interface. They are listening. They are listening. So please, any feedback that you have, please give it to them. Okay. And I've heard good feedback. I've heard kind of, I won't say bad feedback. I've heard maybe some lost feedback from folks. So hopefully, as you go through and you look at the menuing system, I really like it, and I've had a couple of folks on here say that they like it as well. So I like it. I think it's, I especially like the favorites. I think that has the ability to make your day go by a lot faster and make you be a lot more efficient, right? So, but by all means, please, if you have other things that you want to give them feedback on, use this send feedback link, and they do look at it, they do monitor it, and they do make changes based off the feedback. So, okay. All right, so I've seen a couple of questions come through. Thank you for those. Handful come through. I think we've addressed most of those questions. Saw one about the merging of payment requests, but I believe we went through that as we were looking. So if there are no further questions, then I will adjourn for today. I do appreciate your time. You've got let me just put this back up here on the screen real quickly. So our contact information is here, our web address, as well as a support email. So if you have any questions relating to this release, please don't hesitate to shoot us an email. We will research it, get back to you, and we will be sending out the slides as well as the videos. We're giving you access to those so that you guys can explore on your own. But I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. And if anything else comes up, certainly let us know. Thank you.